So Sigma was actually really interesting because there were a couple things that we knew about him. We definitely wanted this to be a Talon character. We wanted to flesh out more Talon. And at the time, Alyssa was working on the short story, What You Left Behind, which was the Baptiste short story. And we were developing the character of MAUGA. And we thought MAUGA was going to be this character.
Like many other lore-focused new hero enthusiasts, I was, initially, a bit disappointed in that first Sigma leak.
Who the fuck is this?
But I quickly warmed up to him and have since gone on to play him quite a bit. Yeah! Nonetheless, I still want MAUGA, as many of us do. I mean, just look at this fine boy.
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it!
There's no doubt that this big Bara's got some hype. But I think part of the fandom's enthusiasm is rooted in the pervasive assumption that MAUGA will be a copy pasta of the Talon Heavy Assault unit. I, for one, have serious doubts about that. And I swear I'm not saying that just to be a contrarian.
MAUGA was going to be this character.
If the devs intended for MAUGA to be a playable heavy assault and nothing more, then they wouldn't have bothered experimenting with these gravity abilities for MAUGA in the first place. One way or another, they want MAUGA to stand apart from the heavy assaults. Here's how this is probably gonna play out in the lore. MAUGA comes crawling back to Talon after being nearly blown up by Baptiste, and boy is he pissed. He no doubt needs serious medical attention, and he takes the opportunity to suggest that, while they're at it, they should give him some shiny new augmentations and weapons to make him deadlier in combat, all for the purpose of hunting down the man who betrayed him. For her part, Moira is all too happy to have another test subject so willingly submit to her tender care. And maybe he'll look something like this.
Wow.
For this concept art, I opted for a mauve and magenta color scheme and mashed together aesthetics informed from the Heavy Assault, Moira's old concept ideations, and, Master Chief's Mark 6 Mjolnir armor. Listen, man, I couldn't help myself. I just love Halo so much. I'll explain the various points of interest as I go.
What can I say except
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
As you can see, I retired the Heavy Assault's machine guns entirely. Come on now, do you really think they're gonna let you use that kind of firepower in PvP? Sure, they could nerf the damage a heck-ton, but then people who wanted a carbon copy playable Heavy Assault would be disappointed anyway. Besides, if you want the Daka chain gun experience, just play Bastion. Okay, before you call for my execution and bury me with "Here lies an idiot who ignored Bastion's low win rate" carved on my tombstone, Overlord has a chain gun, and he's very likely to be a playable character in the future, so just wait for him. But we'll talk more about Overlord another time. Anyway, I'm giving MAUGA new guns. The splash cannons. Well, when I say new, what I really mean is that I took Moira's unused concept art gun, photoshopped the hell out of it, and reimagined it as an unholy hybrid of Zarya's particle cannon secondary fire and Mei's endothermic blaster primary fire, in that it shoots blobs that have both splash damage and a slowing effect. Please, withhold your applause until after I get into the specs. MAUGA gets 3 shots per clip in each splash cannon, for a total of 6 before the auto-reload kicks in. The area of effect of each shot is a whopping 4 meters as opposed to Zarya's 2, Pharah's 2.5, and Sigma's 3. Enemies on the outer edge of the AoE take less damage than those closer to the center, but no matter where your enemies are in the AoE, they won't be spared from the 20% movement speed reduction that lasts 2 whole seconds. That's the same as Mei's initial slowing effect from her primary fire. Unlike Mei, MAUGA's speed debuff never increases, even if you hit the same target in succession. Still, slows of any kind are powerful in most situations. For the sake of balance, I imagine the damage of each projectile would be 55 at maximum on a direct hit, and no more than 30 or so in the splash zone. I'm aware that the devs have hinted that they won't introduce quite as many crowd control abilities in the future, but I think that's gonna apply more so to DPS heroes than tanks. Tanks exist to make space, and crowd control is one of the best ways to do that. I want you to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this concept because, yeah, there's more, and it all combos together.
What can I say except
Get over here!
My name is Jeff.
I may be disregarding the main features of the heavy assaults, but I'm not throwing out everything we know about MAUGA. At one point in the short story, MAUGA grabs and chokes a random lackey. Maybe I'm crazy, but that sounds like a potential ability to me. When holding down secondary fire, MAUGA's movement speed increases by 20%, and he grabs the first enemy that comes within 2 meters in front of him. The grappled enemy takes a very small damage over time, like 5 per second, because MAUGA ain't exactly being gentle. It's impossible for MAUGA to kill a full health enemy with the grapple alone because your grapple resource meter will deplete in 10 seconds, and the initial movement towards your enemy also depletes the meter. The main point of grapple is to immobilize that enemy and move them wherever you choose. In the meantime, they can take damage from MAUGA's teammates, or be dropped off a cliff. I know this sounds strong and scary, and it is, but it does have its drawbacks and counterplay. Grapple's resource meter takes twice as much time to fully recharge as it does to deplete. So if you want that full 10 seconds back, you essentially have a 20-second cooldown. While the one being grappled can't really do anything about it, the enemy team can rescue MAUGA's hostage by disrupting the grapple with any crowd control move. Alternatively, just kill him.
what can I say except
Why are you gay?
Oh, he doesn't have a passive. But his quick melee is different. Instead of a single 30 damage punch, he attacks with both fists for 60 damage. He strikes one punch at a time, individually doing 30 each, with the same half-second duration per hit followed by the 1 second cooldown all quick melees have. I don't anticipate 60 damage quick melee to be well-received by DPS and support mains, but I think it suits his character and gives him another close quarters brawling option other than his secondary. He still has to get within standard melee range to even pull it off, so...
Just walk away.
Unless, of course, he slows you with his primary or uses this next ability.
what can I say except
You can't catch me!
You got knocked the fuck out!
Orisa's grabby green ball saw a lot of use when people finally realized that Orisa was a good character all along. Now imagine that you are the green ball, drawing in your foes for some goofy time. Magneton Lure is MAUGA's alternative big boy brawl initiation tool for those times when your primary slowing debuff just isn't enough. Upon activation, enemies within a 5-meter radius of MAUGA are drawn towards him, putting them in range of his melee moves. For those of you familiar with how Halt works, you might have noticed that Magneton Lure's radius is a whopping 2.5 meters shorter than Halt's. Very intentional on my part, cause I don't actually want Magneton Lure to be as good as Halt. To that end, I've made it a little worse in other ways too. The pole movement speed is 10 meters per second, which is half of Halt's. That means it'll take half a second for enemy players to be right up in MAUGA's hugging range, and those with adequate reaction times can turn and damage or CC him before he capitalizes on it. Magneton Lure also has a longer cooldown than Halt, 12 seconds versus 8. There, that's the very last of MAUGA's crowd control moves. You can unclench your butthole now.
what can I say except
NANI?
Silly bitch, your weapons cannot harm me. Don't you know who the fuck I am?
Jeff.
The other holdover I'm expecting from what you left behind is MAUGA's shield. The narrative leaves a lot to the imagination, but I got the sense that it might have been a generic forward-facing barrier. Since my concept hinges on the idea of MAUGA getting sexy upgrades, I'm gonna give him something slightly more unique. Dome Barrier is a hemispherical shield that centers over top MAUGA with a diameter of 10 meters. It's like if you cut a Winston bubble in half and rigged it to float along with you. MAUGA can't do anything else while using Dome Barrier. Like Reinhardt, you can protect or attack, but not both at once. Therefore, I feel completely justified in making Dome Barrier a toggled ability with no set duration. It stays up until either you manually click it off, or it gets destroyed. The cooldown scales to how much health it has left when it deactivates. The total health pool is 1200, and every subtraction of 100 equals a second added to the cooldown. If your Dome Barrier is completely destroyed, you have to wait a potentially fatal 12 seconds to activate it again. Use it wisely, folks.
Frickin' laser beam!
Remember Concept Moira's threatening tentacles? I'm bringing them back, baby! Those 4 loops on MAUGA's back uncoil into spooky tentacles that auto-target and beam down up to 4 enemies within 15 meters for a duration of 8 seconds. I don't know what Moira's tentacles were meant to do originally, but who cares? They're laser tentacles now. Why lasers?
Because it's cool.
By default, the beam tentacles will individually attack 1 to 4 random targets within range, but you can use your interact function to say, no, I want that twink obliterated.
Oh no!
And select a specific enemy player for all 4 of them to focus. The damage per second of each beam depends on how close the targets are to MAUGA. At 11 to 15 meters away, the beams tickle opponents for 35 DPS each, although that threat quickly escalates if all 4 of them are on one target, doing 140 damage per second. At 6 to 10 meters, we dial up the threat level to 70 DPS per beam, or 280 DPS total. If an enemy is 5 meters away or less, I hope they wrote a last will and testament, cause they'll be hard-pressed to get away from 105/420 damage per second before death itself grabs them in a full Nelson and whispers, "Nothing personnel, kid," in their ear. Oh, speaking of grabbing, perhaps you're wondering if MAUGA can combo his grapple with his ult and hold them still while he annihilates them. I'm gonna say no. Too OP. Most likely his grapple wouldn't even work during his ultimate, but I also like the idea of him holding someone hostage and forcing them to watch Tentacles murder their friends. And I'm doubling down on my wickedness by making this a transformation ultimate. If Zen wasted his transcendence or Ana whiffed her sleep dart, begging Brigitte to save you won't do you any good, even if you vow never to leave another angry post on the forums ever again. Before I go, I want to touch on something I don't often bother bringing up in my hero concepts: the HP bar. I did talk at length about King's hypothetical health, and I included a bar for Junker Queen in a blink and you miss it moment, but I usually don't care enough to talk about health pools just cause it isn't usually much of a mystery. Tanks have the most variety in health bars, so I do wonder what MAUGA's will look like. If he's gonna be a huge hitbox brawny brawler, then he'll need something substantial, or he'll be straight trash. I think it should at least look something like Reinhardt's experimental 132 bar. Could he even be the first hero to reach 700 HP?
Just stop. Just stop it. This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
Or maybe, just maybe, the devs will try something a little more radical. Maybe, instead of a health bar, there's just a giant middle finger in the corner of your screen. Perhaps, instead of dying, MAUGA just occasionally takes breaks to knock back a cold one with the boys.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
What the hell was that?